At the Tata Motors stand, this time I have with me the man of the moment in many ways, who's leading the charge. This big change that you're seeing at Tata Motors. Today you see a huge, let's say, piece of that puzzle falling into place with brand new products being displayed for the very first time. Mr. Guenter Butschek, it's a pleasure.
Nice meeting you.
And,
Thanks.
Thank you for having us. It's an important milestone day in many ways. Do you agree?
Yeah, indeed, as I mentioned earlier in the press conference, we were eagerly waiting for this day in order to do something which was also emphasized in the invitation sent to you, where we said promises delivered is going to be the theme of Geneva this year. Why I'm saying so? A year ago, we actually brought concept cars. And I know that the Tata Motors history was very often, in particular here in Geneva, about concepts. And people very often ask what happened to the concept that was shown 2 years ago, 3 years ago, because only a few products ever hit the Indian roads, not even talking about the global markets. And that's something which we promised a year ago, where we said, although we all call this concept cars or show cars, but what all these cars represent is the future product lineup of Tata Motors. And today, we actually delivered on the promise because we have 4 world premieres, as we call it, 1 European premiere, as it is the Indian in India called Harrier, and the feedback was accordingly, where everybody said, "Hey, wow, something has obviously changed at Tata Motors."
You kept your promise. And this year, of course, we see the stunning new concept as well, the H2X, which now everybody, I think, assumes and believes will certainly be a production model. And you've already said next year. How important is it to now take the story to the next step? I mean, you have, like you said, you made a few promises, you've started to deliver on those promises. The market in India is also responding to that. We've seen that with your sales figures. What happens from here?
That's the beginning of the journey. Because we have the 2 new architectures. And the architectures, as mentioned earlier, are supposed to enable Tata Motors to actually bring a very differentiated product portfolio in the years to come, which could possibly go as high as 12 to 14 different products, while at the same point of time, basing these new products on the same architectures with a high degree of commonality and modularity. We build economies of scale. So in order to really optimize our cost base, while at the same point of time differentiating the product offerings to an extent that they fit into existing sub-segments in the Indian market. And you know the Indian market is the most sub-segmented and fragmented marketplace in the entire world. But while at the same point of time, due to commonality, to actually build economies of scale. That has always been the problem in the past, because we had 6 platforms. We had a good variety of different top hats. Yes, some of the products were aged, were dated, but the bigger problem was that bringing on any of these platforms a new model did not necessarily give us a very strong improvement on economies of scale. Here we are now in the play, because Omega, accommodating the Harrier, and now getting a brother or a sister, it's up to you, with the 7-seater, where the product still needs to be Christianed for the Indian market, on the Omega, on the Alpha, where we said this is also going to serve as an architecture for a family of products. And we even brought a first indication on the family for in 2 dimensions. The one is internal combustion engine of the Ultras. On the other side of the stand of the pavilion, we do have the electric version. Because people looked at me a year ago, I'm not quite sure how you looked at me at this point of time, where we said it's battery electric protected. Everybody said, we have heard a lot about protecting for different kind of powertrain solutions, but at this point of time, there was no architecture available which really brought a differentiation to the electric powertrain variant. We have it, because the battery
sits... And you've announced it for the market. I mean, you've already
So exactly, this is a production version.
Yeah.
It's a production version, and honestly speaking, if it would not be all out at this point of time to get our BS6 range of products ready for this back-to-back launch, as it is required by the Supreme Court decision effective as of the 1st of April 2020, this vehicle could go into the market even earlier. But I have limited resources, so therefore we need to set priorities. BS6 is first priority, because this is making or breaking the company. EV is opening the next chapter, and with this vehicle, I think we have actually delivered of something where Sailesh Chandra, the president of the newly established vertical e-mobility, some 2 weeks ago at the media roundtable said the second phase. And I do know from some feedback, lots of people expected the second phase is possibly going to be some 3 to 5 years down the road. No, it's 15 months down the road that the Ultras is going to get an electric version, which is a different product, although it's a twin, because it's a flat floor. You have the free-floating cockpit as a kind of reference to what we had on show last year, the e-Vision sedan, where we got raving feedback a year ago. But in all honesty, this was a show car, and we also called it a show car. This year we have concept cars which are effectively production ready. And that's valid for all of the products on show. And you actually summarized something which is very important to me and to the entire Tata Motors team. If we have a show car, where we just would like to claim design, technical features, variants as a kind of test case, but not decided to get into the market, we will clearly earmark it as a show car. Yeah. But in the moment, it's not going to be called a show car. You can assume for the future that it's going to be straight a production vehicle, that we actually exaggerate the design here and there. Take the H2X. Even if you fell in love with the tires, these tires will not be available on the series car.
That's still about 80% of that which will make it production, which is the encouraging part. I think in the past
it's more than 80%.
Even better. But you know what I'm saying? Like in the past, it was probably the other way around with many brands, not just Tata Motors. The part you mentioned about the flexibility and modularity that the new platforms give you, especially as you increasingly go to a point. I mean, currently in the market, you still have different platforms, but when you get to that point where it is going to just be these two, what kind of, and let me ask you one thing before I get to my real question. The fact that a lot of these announcements for the deadlines, BS6 or safety or even the CAFE norms, the fact that some of that was known when you got into this plan to do the two platform strategy, do you think that was good timing for you, that you could quickly build some of that into these two platforms?
It's simplifying our plane, there's absolutely no doubt, because at the point we actually conceptualized these products, not that we had a final date as of when we would go for these changes, but we had at least expected, or we added to the specification for the conceptual phase that these changes might come, because there was an expected upgrade on the safety side, like pedestrian, for example, additional airbags to be accommodated in the vehicles. That was somewhat known. Was it known exactly as of which date? And we have seen the dates moving several times. Even during my short 3 years period of tenure at Tata Motors, we saw it moving. But the important point was taking it into consideration, making it package protected, like, for example, electrification. Honestly speaking, when we conceptualized the battery protection, as you now see it in execution on the Ultras EV, we said, why shall we? Because that really brought us back to the drawing board to say we need the long members need to be differently arranged, the crash impact needs to be recalculated. If we would like to provide sufficient space to accommodate the battery pack, the center of gravity of the vehicle, to actually provide best possible safety on the one, but drivability and handling on the other side. So all of this has been taken into consideration, and now we have a very flexible play to say, oh, this is going to come, we're going to go for it.
Now you're well placed.
Now we are well placed, because on these vehicles I don't have to touch the basic structure of the vehicle. If I need to introduce, for example, on a Tiago or Tigor, the requirements on the change in the safety regulations, it's not just going to be protected within the package as is. There I really need to go in steel. There we need to redesign the front end, and you know what is going to happen in the moment I touch my body. It requires a large queue of different validation testing in order to prove the certification requirements of the product. This is all going to be behind us as far as the new products are concerned. And that gives us the opportunity to leverage the initial investment, to be much more agile in our response to changes in the marketplace, may it be regulatory, or may it come from the competition or the customers' expectations, because you mentioned it earlier, you have raised the bar as far as customer expectations are concerned. Our customers are getting more and more educated by what is globally available. And we have even protected, for example, active driver assistance systems. Without going into the details, but you will see at the launch of these products, you will find features which would not be necessarily expected in these kind of products, in these kind of sub-segments in the Indian market. But it's all going to be available. So it's a very exciting place because as you have the package protection, each and every additional feature you bring and you roll it out across the same product, the product sharing the same architectures, you build economies of scale, and all of a sudden
it also makes it more accessible for the consumer.
And the solutions become all of a sudden affordable. Yeah. Because in all honesty, India is a market which is getting more and more demanding as far as customer expectations are concerned, but at the same point of time, it will remain a market which calls for affordable solutions. And for us as a native player, so to say, I think we have understood what this challenge is all about. And I think we found a very attractive way to translate this challenge into very aspirational products. In line with our brand tagline, we are saying connecting aspirations. So we are driving aspirations as we get it connected with the solutions on hand.
No, I have to tell you, and I know you will not say this, but I can say it, which is some of this, making certain things affordable, bringing certain new ideas and solutions to our consumer in India. All of us for years have had that expectation from another player, given the scale that you're talking about. It's great to see that Tata is now doing that because it's now driving the other players to do it. So I am very happy. But never mind my comment.
Oh, it's good. The first time that we get called a trendsetter or a thought leader, but it's appreciated. I take it as a compliment from your side on behalf of my entire team.
It's much appreciated from all of us, I can tell you, and
thank you.
From the people we speak to as well on our platforms. The second place where the same thing has happened is safety. The Nexon has sort of maybe been the cherry on the cake, but it didn't just start there. The fact that you had a very different approach towards safety, again, not expected from an Indian player, not expected from a mass market player. How much of that has changed the image of the company, and then how much of it now changes what people will expect from you going forward on all future products?
The interesting part is, and I would like to rephrase your question if you don't mind, that it has changed expectations as far as the customers are concerned, no doubt. That the first ever Indian vehicle that has obtained the 5-star NCAP rating has actually brought lots of awareness and attention to the subject of safety, where we all know that it has not necessarily been a talking point in the recent past. So I think this Nexon 5-star NCAP has already served a great purpose and is about to change the Indian landscape, giving more emphasis on safety. For us, it has raised the bar. Some of my people would say, no, it's not NCAP that has raised the bar. You have raised the bar, because I brought it to a very simple headline to say, wherever there's a star rating, like NCAP, it's going to be all us, and it's going to be all 5. So give me 5 is the theme internally. And on top to all of the other challenges in design, in our engineering department called ERC, in terms of BS6, etc., we are currently running a huge investigation across the entire product range of what needs to be done in order to actually provide the safest vehicles in the Indian market out of Indian production from an all-Indian OEM, meeting 5 stars across the product portfolio. Sometimes it's a question of minor adjustments. For others, we possibly need to combine it with a mid-cycle enhancement, or as it is usually called, a kind of a facelift. Yeah. But we will leverage each and every opportunity, knowing that it comes with cost, but where we are of the opinion safety is of utmost importance when it comes to sustainability of mobility, sustainable mobility in India. Because what is the government's investment in infrastructure all about? What is the investment in customer awareness all about if the products can't keep up with the safety requirements of an increasingly more enhanced public or individual transport system? So, and we need to drive it. It should not just be driven, as you know from earlier interactions, by changes in the regulatory environment. I'm a very strong believer these kind of enhancement needs to be driven by the industry as such, because safety needs to be a competitive factor as it's supposed to be a competitive advantage of Tata Motors as we speak.
But tell me this, I mean, that kind of, let's say, drive or focus within the company, while it's very admirable and it's great to see for us, I know it puts a lot of pressure in terms of the investments required, because you mentioned, of course, you need to invest to get the vehicles up to this standard. Some amount of that, like you said, may be coming from regulations. That's the pressure that's equal on all manufacturers. You know you have to do it. But this other stuff that you've taken on, where you're trying to improve benchmarks which are much above what is required by regulation, how difficult is it to keep those investments going when on the sales side you are still in a recovery period? You're still, I mean, of course we're seeing great return of the buyer to your showroom.
We call premiumness, but lots of customer perception is still about value.
Both from your the Tata Sons perspective and also the shareholder perspective, how do you justify those investments?
First of all, on the subjects where you would like to differentiate yourself from the competition, like safety, you actually need to build awareness. As long as safety is not a talking point, you will not be able to differentiate yourself.
The Nexon sales prove that. I mean, the sales went up.
Lovely. Last month was the highest sale of Nexon ever. In an environment where the market was very subdued in its demand. So therefore, Nexon, I think we are extremely well on track. And it's a pleasure to see how you can actually get into a market segment in which we never were before, in still a relatively short period of time, because Nexon is now in the market for in the meanwhile, almost 18 months, and it has consistently been increasing its fan community, because it's almost, you are a fan of the Nexon, you're not just a customer or driver of the Nexon. But the question of affordability is not necessarily a question of pricing power, it's a question of intelligent design. Now coming back again to the role of Alpha and Omega architecture. As I said, this is package protected. So there are lots of thought process went into the specification and conceptualization of these products
behind you as well.
In order to make sure that we have display without really going into the structure of the product. So therefore adding it, it's a question as we see that there is demand, as we do see that there is pricing power, and the interest of the customers to go for such kind of upgrade, we can actually play the game. On the other products where we really need to go into the structure, you need to actually bundle intelligent packages. What is an intelligent package? As mentioned earlier, if there's a facelift, it's a wonderful opportunity to say, okay, we're also going to touch the metal, because it's anyway going to enhance the facelift, the scope of the facelift. The customers really take the vehicle as something new, although it's possibly still something minor. But the minor is not only what a customer needs to see, it's also what a customer can experience in case of, not a case to be envisaged when it comes to safety, but if we can actually get it, if we can get it to a 5-star rating, and we just make it part of a somewhat bigger package, and the bigger packages ahead of us, they are bigger. Because if you just take meeting the regulatory change in pedestrian safety, this is not a small change. That really goes into the metal. Now, if you know what needs to be done on the metal structure of the body structure of the vehicle, to meet at the same point of time a 5-star GN cap, that's the opportunity. So driving it standalone in isolation, it's a very difficult proposition, because customers most probably not going to pay for it. But if you can intelligently bundle it, having it on the agenda. If you don't have it on the agenda, we will not come to the idea to bundle it. But if you put it high on the agenda, then you seek for packages where you can bring this in. And as safety becomes a talking point, then it's actually attractive to have it in the package as such. It's a huge shift in paradigm. Not only for us at Tata Motors, I think even for the Indian market.
How is it possible to keep those investments going? Because as a business, it's difficult to sometimes convince shareholders that this is important?
Yeah.
You've already done it, so which is why I'm asking.
And you have a product strategy. The product strategy has certain pillars. Safety is one of these pillars, because you might recall at the inaugurational session of the MOVE Summit last year in September, where I had the pleasure to represent a Tata Group and Tata Motors. I actually called for a CES. There was a big laughter in the room because people thought the first managing director of an OEM was actually applying for additional taxation. No, it was not about taxation. It's about connected, electric, shared and safe. It was a call for improvement of safety as the need of the hour, because
the market moves up.
Let's not dream about 5 million newly registered vehicles in a 5 years' time. Let's not dream Indian market can become number 3, as it just recently become a number 4, if we don't crack safety. And this needs an inclusive approach, triggered by the product, but also as far as awareness and also reinforcement of traffic laws is concerned. And if we can actually join forces, I think India is going to be a much safer place on its public roads than India is today. And that's not only relevant to the four-wheelers or multi-axle trucks. Everybody, you as a pedestrian, being on a bicycle, being on a bike, on a scooter, I think this needs to be the ultimate objective if we would like to grow. Because otherwise sustainability is not going to be determined by zero emission. It's going to be determined by not being safe in the future.